listener production.
Hello, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. We all learned pretty quickly in 2020 about virtual schooling. Whether kids and teachers liked it or not, education, like almost everything else, moved online, seemingly overnight. That saw just over 4 million Aussie kids go without face-to-face interaction, learning mostly from a laptop in their bedrooms. One thing that has been on the rise ever since, even as things went back to normal, is school refusal.
I think some kids realised that they didn't have to go to school, so that there was other options. And then going back to normal life, we went, this is just too much.
Now, virtual schools are booming in popularity, and some experts think it's the answer to getting kids who fear the classroom an education. That deep dive with educator and award-winning speaker Michelle Mitchell coming up in the second half of this episode. First, though, let's get into the headlines with Antoinette Latouf. It is Monday, the 9th of September.
G'day, Sasha. Hello, everyone. Competition at the 2024 Paris Paralympics has wrapped up this morning with just one Aussie claiming a medal on the final day. Madison Di Rosario, our flag bearer, won silver in the women's marathon T54, but also revealed her dad had died on the day of the opening ceremony last week.
This week's been a little bit of a blur. We've just wanted to sort of get to this point. I feel like I should have said this in an interview. I haven't told my performance team yet. So it's put a lot into perspective, I think, going into these games.
She's on 9 there. Gee, Sasha, how bittersweet that silver medal must have been. Di Rosario also said she considered heading home, but her family encouraged her to stay on in Paris to compete.
Yeah, bittersweet's the right word. Now, her medal was the final in Australia's tally, so we finished up 9th on the ladder. We had 18 gold, 17 silver and 28 bronze. Now, the closing ceremony is happening this morning. It started at 4 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Now, unsurprisingly, Lauren Parker, who won 3 medals across the games, including 2 gold, and James Turner, who won gold in running, they were both chosen as Australia's flag bearers. The mother of the Georgia school shooter has revealed she warned her son's school about a possible extreme emergency the day he carried out the shooting. 14-year-old Colt Gray has been charged with murdering 2 students and 2 teachers at Appalachia High School last week. Call logs shared with the Washington Post showed the boy's mother, Marcy Gray, had a 10-minute phone call with the school about half an hour before her son reportedly opened fire. The shooting saw 9 people also wounded.
Both Colt and his father, Colin Gray, appeared in court on Friday and neither entered a plea. So Colt, who's the 14-year-old, has been charged with 4 counts of murder, and Colin, his father, has been charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter and child cruelty. Prosecutors say he provided his son the semi-automatic rifle used in the shooting. And so Colin's charges are part of an attempt by prosecutors to hold parents accountable for their children's actions in school shootings. And also, Sasha, in a separate interview, the boy's grandfather, Charlie, he told CBS News that his wife had visited the school, so that would be the grandmother, the day before and spoken with teachers as they were having some problems with him not going to school and this kind of thing. And that's a quote there.
Yeah, and also worth noting, in May 2023, both Colin and Colt were interviewed by investigators about online threats made to carry out a school shooting. So they had already been on investigators' radar before this tragedy that happened last week. And there was an investigation that was carried out that said, his dad told the investigator that his son had struggled with his parents' separation and taunting by classmates. So there's this track record of this kid at the end of the day having some pretty serious issues and having made threats to carry out a school shooting as well.
Yeah, and it's not clear what caused Colt's mother to contact the school, flagging an extreme emergency, but I suspect that will come out as the trial unfolds. Sasha, I'm not sure if you saw, but Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance, he was criticised for referring to school shootings as a fact of life. So that happened at a rally, and he also suggested that the answer to this was to bolster security at schools and, of course, not to take guns off people. So I want you to imagine this. You've planned an amazing weekend away in the Hunter Valley region only to be greeted by shrouds of bushfire smoke. Or you're on your bucket list trip to the Daintree rainforest but can't access it because it's been cut off by flooding. Or maybe you're due to fly out of Melbourne bound for Western Australia but can't leave on time because of violent storms. So that's the picture being painted by a new report. And the report is predicting almost 70% of Australia's tourist destinations are at major risk from climate change. The analysis by insurance company Zurich and economic analysts Mandala looked at how vulnerable areas are to 9 climate perils. And these are wind, flood, heat, cold, storm, drought, bushfire, hail and rain, and then added 2 degrees of warming to those scenarios.
So having a look at the report, it showed just how vulnerable so many of Australia's major tourism destinations are. You know, it found that our museums and places like art galleries are fine. You know, unsurprisingly, they're in buildings, but anything that's outside exposed to the elements is at risk, 68% of which is, you know, where our major tourist destinations are. So this report has sparked warnings to the tourism industry in Australia, saying it needs to do more to advocate for climate change action because ultimately they're the ones that are going to suffer. And, you know, it's worth noting the Black Summer bushfires, which happened in 2019 and 2020. We've seen this in action. It cut tourism revenues by 35%. And it reduced the output of tourism and its supply chains by $2.8 billion almost instantly. Now, I saw this in action. My parents live somewhere that was impacted by the Black Summer bushfires. And, you know, the months afterwards, we went to a town called Mogo, which is on the south coast of New South Wales. And half of the town was impacted by the fires and all these shops had to move to demountables that were off the high street. And, you know, we went into one of these shops and they're like, we're going to have to close. No one knows we're here. No one's coming to the region because it's all black and burned. And, you know, things rebound and you go to Mogo now and it's you know, thriving again. But the instant impact, you see it and it's real and it affects people's livelihoods. We talk all the time about hypotheticals. You know, reading this report, you go, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But we've seen it and we've seen it in 2019, 2020. So quite a confronting report.
Look, I have no doubt based on the planet getting warmer that we are going to see, we know all the data is there, we are going to see more climate emergencies and we are going to see more trips being cancelled. There's something in the back of my mind that makes me be a little bit dubious or sceptical when an insurance company does this research because I'm like, what's your intention to try and go, oh, you know, we have the data and now we're going to make, you know, that fine print we don't read anyway half the time. Now we're going to make it even harder for you to claim compensation. It's like, we told you in 2024. And I don't know. I just, for me, like it's a little red flag has popped up when an insurance company does this research because in my experience, insurance companies are very well versed at doing everything to ensure that they make a lot of money and those who are insured struggle to get compensation.
Fair point. And Elle Macpherson has been quizzed by Nine journalist Tracy Grimshaw about her decision to spruik natural therapies after her breast cancer diagnosis. Now, you might remember we did talk about this in a deep dive last Thursday with Dr. David Robert Grimes, who, along with other medical professionals, slammed her comments as dangerous. But in an interview on 60 Minutes last night, the Aussie supermodel stuck to her guns and insisted following a natural treatment path after her lumpectomy has healed her.
Do you believe that you cured your breast cancer holistically?
Well, the word cure is a very interesting word. No, I healed through breast cancer. Yes, I did.
I have no idea what that sentence means. I healed through breast cancer. Look, I think it's worth noting that Macpherson has her own wellness company and is currently promoting her book. I also want to point out that there is a lot of merit in natural therapies and alternative therapies to couple with mainstream medicine for those who've got the right medical advice and the resources, because often alternative therapies can be incredibly expensive. And so I know a lot of people are criticising Macpherson, and it is irresponsible given her stature, given she's a multimillionaire, given we don't really know the details, don't even know what she speaks in alternative therapy speak. Like, I healed through breast cancer. Like, I don't know what that means, but I don't want to bemoan the impacts and the benefits of natural therapies because I do think it's beneficial in conjunction with a treatment plan from your healthcare professional. That's my take on it. Sasha, what do you reckon?
I agree to an extent, but I did this chat with Dr. Grimes and I kind of asked him that question. I said, why should we begrudge her talking about a positive experience that she's had, whether it be with holistic medicine or with traditional forms of medicine? And he said, well, it's not about that when you recognise she has something to gain from it. She did have surgery, which removed this precancerous growth. So she did have traditional medicine and then she went off into the desert and spent 8 months healing. So I think it's all kind of cherry picked. The fact that the traditional medicine probably got her through initially and then she's gone and had this lovely time to reconnect with herself, I think is great. But painting it as this cure-all is probably what is irresponsible in this situation.
And I completely understand. You can't child pose and kombucha sip your way out of cancer. And that's probably that messaging which has been criticised as unfair and unrealistic and potentially dangerous.
Yep. Antoinette, thank you. And thank you for being here for the headlines. Next up, it is our deep dive looking into the rise of virtual schooling in our post-COVID world.
Virtual schools in Australia are nothing new. They've been around for at least 30 years and have been mostly aimed at helping Aussies in rural areas or those with complex health needs have better access to education. In 2020 though, they became the norm, becoming the only source of education for almost every student across Australia. And with that came a number of unforeseen challenges, one of which triggered a federal Senate inquiry last year. School refusal. Now, school refusal is an emotionally based avoidance of school grounded in heightened anxiety. It's what teachers and child psychologists say has contributed to an unprecedented decline in school attendance in every state and territory. And while it's improving, levels haven't returned to what they were before the pandemic. To paint you a picture, attendance rates in 2019 for students in years 1 to 10 were at 91.4%. In 2023, they were at 88.6%. Nationally, that's thousands of kids who aren't in their classrooms. A possible solution, though, is turning to the very thing that put the issue in the spotlight to begin with: virtual schooling. Joining me now to find out more is educator, author, award-winning speaker, and founder of the Youth Excel Centre, Michelle Mitchell. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing. First up, for those who are new to the term, what exactly is school refusal?
There's a whole gradient of it. So some of our listeners might be experiencing kids who are just saying, hey, I can't go to school today, or I don't want to go to school today, and just putting up a little bit of resistance. And then others will have kids who haven't been to school for 6 months and are like flat out refusing, avoiding going to school. So there's this kind of continuum that it sits on. It's just kids that just can't, don't want to go to school.
Yeah, and in terms of painting a little bit of a picture, what could that look like for certain parents? Like, what are some of the behaviours those kids are displaying?
Just saying, I can't. Sometimes they can't put their finger on it. There can be some really underlying issues like ongoing friendship issues. My teacher hates me. I'm overwhelmed by schoolwork, or they don't feel competent in doing schoolwork. COVID has absolutely exasperated as well. I think the education system is overloaded, and there just is this teacher shortage, this chaos sometimes in certain education settings as well. So there's a lot of issues surrounding it that is making schools not the hub of hope and this place of belonging that kids used to feel like they were going to. And it's a real thing for families.
And it's interesting that you touched on COVID there, because there have been a number of teachers and schools that have reported a rise in school refusal or school can't since COVID. What exactly do you think it was about COVID and the lockdowns that made that happen, that contributed to that?
I think some kids realised that they didn't have to go to school, so that there was other options. I think like a lot of us, we realised too that there was a lot of stimulus in our lives, and that the stimulus went down, and then going back to normal life, we went, this is just too much. So just like getting kids back after summer break or after a weekend is a little bit harder. It's like the Monday morning blues. COVID was like the extended Monday morning blues. And it's been really difficult to get a lot of kids back after COVID.
The interesting thing in researching this, I came across a few different reports of how it's a little different to those post-holiday blues and the Monday blues, to the extent that, there are 14, 15-year-old kids that are stripping naked in the car ride to school, to that extent to avoid school.
Yeah, absolutely. And the extended period time has really impacted kids. The work that I'm doing in Melbourne, I am just seeing is like they've had sometimes 2 years without that consistent contact with their peers. And that's why I'm such a big believer in school, because even if they're doing remote learning, they're not having that constant contact with their peers. So they're losing years of that important social emotional development that they do get when they're seeing their peers every single day. And so when you're looking at years of their life getting knocked around, you see the attention reductions. You're seeing them not be able to manage conflict quite as well. And I'm seeing big, burly, year 8 boys. You're talking to them about self-esteem and identity development, and you can hear a pin drop in the room, and they're leaning in because you can really see this hole in the place in their lives that just hasn't really developed at a normal rate that it usually does.
Yeah, and that's a really, really great segue into virtual schooling. There's a lot of solutions being thrown around ways to mitigate school refusal and the rise of school refusal. Where do you think virtual schooling fits in with all of that?
I think it's going to absolutely need to have a place in the future. What I ask myself, though, is what are children avoiding if they are schooling at home in a virtual capacity without the presence of other trusted adults besides their parents and without that constant interaction with their peers? I worry about the adults that will produce, and I worry about the hole in their development if that happens. And I think parents are tired. I think they're tired of the fight of getting kids to school. But my call to parents is, oh man, we love these kids, but it is time to lead them and make sure that they get everything they need to function as thriving adults. And I really do feel like they need the developmental environment that school does bring. And, if there's teachers listening out there, they go to school to be noticed, to be loved, and you are such a big part of that.
Some people who are a little bit critical of virtual schooling as a solution to this, they claim that it's a bit of a Band-Aid solution, and they're drawing on that idea that, remote education caused all these issues and new issues in education. Would you agree with that?
I would, to a certain degree, absolutely. I think for some kids it is a legitimate option in the sense that it doesn't stop the ball rolling altogether, because a completely stagnant stone is really difficult to get moving. If it is parents' only option to keep education in kids' lives, I'm all for it. And virtual schooling has gone a long way. There's a lot of additional things we can put in it to make it quite well-rounded, and it does suit some families. One of my staff members' kids is doing home virtual schooling, and they have so many extracurricular activities, but they're in a quite a fortunate position to be able to invest the time into it. What I worry about is families taking it on almost because school's too hard, but they don't have the time and energy to make it work well. So what actually happens is they go to work, and what do teenagers do? I mean, they hang out in shopping centres, and good kids can get themselves into serious trouble, and that is not a good option for kids. I think teenagers need loving, caring, trusted adults around their lives. And I think the way of the future, even with traditional schooling, is going to include an element of virtual schooling. I think it has to be able to pare back and accommodate the diversity of kids that we've got. And I'm hoping that's going to make way for more connection, for more belonging, for more of what kids are craving right now, which is that sense of community that is going to bring kids back into traditional education in a way that's going to hold them.
Based on the data at the moment, we have examples from around the country, but one example that really stood out to me is in Victoria, the virtual school Victoria. They had a huge inundation of enrolments in 2023, and they actually saw over 1,000 students referred to the school by health professionals. And anecdotally, there's heaps of parents saying that there are wait lists for virtual schools. How big are those wait lists at the moment?
Huge, especially from the neurodivergent community. It's huge. But I know a lot of schools as well are making big accommodations, and their heart is to accommodate soft starts for students who need it, like soft sensory starts. So environments that are slow and quiet for kids, or breakfast programs that work for kids, or running clubs that work for kids, or even allocating teachers that will meet kids at the car so we can deliver kids to one trusted adult that they really bond with. Schools that will check in with kids in the morning. There is amazing things happening in traditional education to help bridge this gap and get kids from home to school. And I really do want to honour the traditional schooling system for the strides and the work that they are doing to help, bridge this gap as well.
There are people listening who don't have kids. If you could cast your eye into the future for us, what happens when this cohort of kids who are school refusing or refusing school, what do they look like when they're adults entering the workforce?
If we let kids avoid the hard stuff, and that's what we're doing when we're saying you don't have to go to school, and we can scale back what going to school looks like. I'm not saying for every child they have to attend for 6 hours a day. Sometimes it's part attendance. It's scaling and monitoring what child can do. But if they don't get that interaction in their life and they're not part of that, and if they don't have to do hard stuff, I worry about what that looks like for their long-term mental health. And I think we love our kids, and now we have to lead them in such a way that we know that's going to be good for their future, not just convenient for their now.
Absolutely. And we put out a call to action for our listeners, and whether they had experienced this issue as parents or whether they'd experienced it as students themselves. One of our listeners has replied to us, and she's told us that her daughter had refused school, and she described it as the scariest thing ever. But the biggest piece of advice she received was that if the school wasn't ready to intervene, or if the school was incapable of supporting the family, that she should move schools. Is that the best advice in this situation?
If you're not getting a partnership with a school that you feel like you can work with, I think that is great advice. And there are a lot of options out there, and each school is treating this in a different way, and every school has their strengths. So you have to find a school that has the right fit for your child. So I think that's great advice. Every parent needs to feel like the school that they're sending their child to is safe. You are not going to send your child to a school or deliver them to a school that you think is not safe, and nor should you. And if you're talking about bullying, if you're talking about disrespect in classrooms, or even a fit that isn't academically right for your child, a parent shouldn't be delivering their kid to a school that is not safe for their child. So that's the very baseline question that a parent has to answer.
Michelle Mitchell, thank you so much for chatting with us.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Michelle Mitchell there. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. Before you go though, we'd love it if you could share this ep with someone you think might enjoy it. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and on TikTok and on YouTube. Just search Listener Newsroom. And we will be back in your feed with another ep this afternoon from 3 p.m. I'm Chris Spyrou. See you next time.
Listener.